So hello everyone, my name is Dana Saccone and I'm the CEO of Steepville, Hawaii. We're the laboratory here in Hawaii that's certified by Department of Health and Narcotics Enforcement Division. You know, the last 15 months have been a lot of hard work, I think, for everybody. A lot of dedication and a lot of problem solving. With the state's most rigorous lab testing in the nation, it's been very hard for all the labs to get certified. Our lab has worked really hard to be the first certified lab, and all I can say is we're setting up this is where the nation is going with this rigorous lab testing. So that is why it's been so tough to get started, you know, and up and going. I think together with all the dispensaries and all the labs and state lab division, I think that we can work closely to change the kinks and make this a more friendly and complete industry.
The last year and a half has been it's been quite an amazing experience because all the dispensaries are setting up essentially 3 different businesses. In most other states would be 3 separate companies: cultivation, manufacturing, and sales, doing it in a single company in parallel at the same time, in an environment with high levels of uncertainty. The level of risk that has been taken on by each of the dispensaries as well as the labs has been incredible. I mean, think about it. We have to plant a crop and not know when we're going to be able to sell it. So how big a crop do you plant? How much? And it costs a lot of money. We have been, as I suspect are the other dispensaries, essentially a construction company for the past year or so. Building, design, engineering, constructing, and continually being shocked at how expensive it is to build stuff here. For us, the lights at the end of the tunnel, our first harvest is scheduled for a couple weeks from now. It's a very exciting time. We're really pleased to see the reception that both Maui and the local green have seen by the patients who have been waiting a really long time for this moment when they can actually purchase lab-tested, high-quality cannabis. So,
thank you, Brian. Kalani?
Yeah. Let's see. So, last 2 years have been an amazing journey. You know, forging new policy and new procedures with all of the governmental agencies, and everybody's figuring it out along with all of the other licensees. It has been one of the most challenging and rewarding experiences professionally. And now that we're open and we're getting to service our patients, it's unbelievable. The impact that we're having. Majority of our patients are elderly. Some are suffering major pain, and the impact and the interaction that it has on our team members is wonderful. Made it all worthwhile. So it's been an awesome journey.
So I would say that for us it's been basically a year because with the passing of legislation allowing nurse practitioners to open clinics, so we've only been in this game where we're the new kids on the block, and I would agree with what Kalani says, and we get to see patients every day who this medicine has changed their lives, and I think that we're just blessed and thankful to be a part of this industry, especially now.
It's been very interesting. It's been very exciting. It's been very educational and very informative. We're starting an industry from the ground up. And your state government really didn't know what it was doing in terms of the administration. And that's why we have run into some problems and obstacles, but nothing insurmountable. The July 2016 date that we put for first sales was, in hindsight, optimistic. But from the legislative perspective, we didn't want to be the ones who didn't give the dates or the right timing of this. But obviously, this is the beginning of something that's going to be huge, not only in Hawaii, but nationally. And once we get to recreational, which I think is going to happen down the road, I can't tell you when, but I do believe it's going to happen. And part of the reason why it will happen is because of our desire and need for tax revenues. Most people don't understand how expensive governing is, and we need to get the money somewhere. So this is the beginning. The medical marijuana program, I believe, is going to flourish in the very near future, and I'm very happy to be a part of it. Thanks.
Very exciting news, but once we received the license, the real work began at that time. I think we've been very lucky. Aloha Green has tried to find as many local Hawaiian residents to put on the team as possible, similar to what Maui has done. Many of them did not have any cannabis experience. We actually have, I think, I'd say less than 10, except for our growers who of course have cannabis experience. Our executive, a number of them have never even used the medicine before, have never even seen it before. And so what we were lucky in finding is that they were very experienced in their management roles previously, and that they're very adaptable as well. So that's been very important. What Brian said about multiple kind of how a vertical license works, where we grow, manufacture, as well as distribute, that's true. It's very difficult. It's in the mainland where you have separate licenses for each of them. You can have core competitive advantages and core competencies for different groups, but because we have to do the whole chain, it's similar to a beer company that would be growing or farming its own hops, transporting and sealing, preparing those hops for beer, brewing the beer, bottling the beer, transporting that beer to a location to sell, and running the retail operation as well for that beer. So it's capitally very intensive, and it takes a lot of work. I was going to talk a little bit about investors, but I think we'll talk about that later. I think Senator Sparrow's right. I think cash and the tax revenue that's there is going to really push this program forward. Currently, cannabis sales have to pay, patients have to pay the GET on that, so that's passed on to the state government. But if we do move into a realm where there is adult use in Hawaii, if you look at other states, you see as high as 36% tax revenue coming from that. And if you look at places like Colorado, because of how they earmarked funds, they actually had so much tax dollars left over that they were giving tax rebates back to its constituents and residents. So that could be something that could happen here in Hawaii, and I think that if the program is done properly, safely, with patient, product, and public safety in mind, then I think that will be very successful.
What's different about the Hawaii business culture, politics, the climate that's making it so different from other dispensaries rolling out in different locations?
I think there's a couple of aspects about the Hawaii program that makes it somewhat unique or unusual. First is the vertical integration that is required. That's highly unusual. There's very few states, Massachusetts is an example of one, that have a full vertical integration. Some states started that way, like Colorado, but rapidly shifted to horizontal. And it's a great model for ensuring limiting or eliminating diversion, but it does create a fair amount of complexity. And the other thing is, two elements to it is our geographic isolation, which is helpful in that we're not, there are no federal issues of crossing state lines like there are concerns in Colorado and Oregon, where neighboring states have actually sued the state of Colorado to eliminate their program, so we don't have those issues. But a lot of the industry in the is primarily on the mainland, so finding and working with industry experts who have done that before, it's quite expensive because you're flying them out here and getting their advice and expertise at commercial scale, cannabis cultivation and packaging and the like. So, and of course, there are the extraordinarily high energy costs that really wreak havoc on cost of goods sold.
You know, I think Hawaii's program is very, very rigorous, but that's a very good thing, particularly with what's happening at the federal level and sort of the eyes that Jeff Sessions is putting on cannabis industry as a whole, and the history of sort of lack of compliance or looseness. You know, for the longevity of Hawaii's program, for it to be vertically integrated, for it to have very high testing standards, to have very high focus on product and patient safety is good. It's challenging. I mean, you know, it certainly makes our day very interesting, that I think that that's where this industry needs to stay, where it shouldn't get watered down or diluted. The other thing that's fabulous about it for patients is that you have a lot clearer visibility on product formulations. You get better information back on product efficacy and how things are working. So you get a lot more information back, which will ultimately make a better product, a better program for the patients at the end of the day.
I think that I'm a little different in that I'm a healthcare provider and I run a clinic. So Hawaii is actually great for nurse practitioners. We have some of the best independent practice laws in the nation when it comes to nurse practitioners. So I think that as a nurse in the cannabis industry, we have an advantage over other parts in the nation just because of our legislation and how we're allowed to practice here.
Hawaii was the first state to approve medical marijuana through the legislature in 2000. That was actually my first year in the legislature, but I actually can't take credit. However, we fell behind when it came to moving our medical marijuana program along, and even adult use, which we haven't even gone there yet. And you know, it took 17 years. And although we are a blue state, a liberal state, a democratic state, you know, there is a conservative lean within the legislature. And part of it in the last few years was law enforcement. And then there was also just members of the legislature. If you know how the legislature works, the power is in the committee chairman or chairwomen. And thus, if you have supportive chairs, it's easy to get measures to move and pass. And if you don't, bills stall and or die. We're at a point now where we've got this program up and running, but it's just in its infancy. And it's going to take some time before all of the licensees get up and running 100%. I don't know, but it's probably going to go into 2018 for sure, and who knows, 2019, because, for example, we recently changed the law where a dispensary can grow up to 5,000 plants. And maybe the owners here might be able to shed some light on getting at that point in capacity. But before you're going to see it grow exponentially, we're going to have to make certain that what we have works. And thus, you know, there's going to be a lot of oversight, a lot of monitoring. It is one of the more highly regulated industries in this state. But I think we're at the point where we're maybe taking the leadership again as the industry grows nationwide. We are doing things that other jurisdictions are not doing, and I think that people will be looking to Hawaii in the future to replicate and duplicate what we are doing.
Thank you. Ty?
And I can answer that question. I think Senator Spiro is right. Each of the licensees are allowed to grow up to 10,000 plants, 5,000 in each of their production centers. We're allowed 2 each. Currently, Aloha Green is growing, I won't give you an exact number, but I'd say between 1,000 and 1,600 plants. So we could still, and that's in our first production center, so we're not even close to our 10,000 plant limit, and we don't even have the other 2 Oahu licensees operating. And I can tell you that we can meet the current demand that's there. The demand is going to increase, though. We see that. You can ask Nurse May and how she is now booked, I'm sure, till next week, and that previously you could get an appointment with Nurse May the same day, but not anymore. So I think you will see that 20 to 50% increase in patients over the next 12 months. So I think the licensees, when we wrote our business plan, I think we all wanted to make sure that we had enough product going forward. But we also wrote our business plans thinking there would be 8 other licensees, like 7 other licensees, or 8 in total, operating within a short period of when you start. Going back to the question about what's difficult here in Hawaii, I think shipping costs and shipping inventory timelines is our biggest issue. We use a lot of HVAC, or air conditioning and environmental control systems. We buy extra 5-ton, 6-ton units just sitting around in storage for parts and for swap out if anything were to happen, just because we're not able to get that unit within a day or within 24 hours. For some of our larger structures that we built, normally, like our greenhouse, for example, they would put that on a flatbed and just drive it from one part of the country to the other. Here in Hawaii, we had to cut pieces and place them into 40-foot containers or into open containers and have them shipped over and then reassemble when they're here in Hawaii. So that has been quite difficult. And then, I think the lack of cannabis experience when it comes to commercial cannabis experience. I think cannabis has had a long history here in Hawaii. People have been growing it, since the 60s. The climate, the outdoor climate in Hawaii is very suitable for cannabis production because of the photo period, because of the temperature and the weather. But what you do see problems with is it's different when you're growing 7 plants or 10 plants if you're a caregiver, and when you're growing 500 plants or 1,000 plants at a time. It's a different mindset, it's a different mentality. And so that's something that we've had, those are some of the difficulties we've had. And then just trying to hire as many local people as possible and not trying to transport or relocate people from the mainland, that's been difficult as well.
Why is that difficult?
I think when people think of Hawaii and they want to move here, it's because they had a very good vacation or they enjoyed their time with their family. I think it's a very different beast when you come and live in Hawaii. I think people are caught off guard with the high living costs. They're just not expecting that. And so we've had some people come and then, the salary might have been fine when they accepted, when they were sitting in Washington or Oregon, but once they get here, they say, well, I need a lot more to maintain that lifestyle that I had over here.
All of our employees are local hires. We brought one person over from the mainland who has substantial commercial cannabis growing expertise that doesn't exist here, at least at the legal level. And so we brought one person over, and everyone else has been local hires. So we've been really fortunate in that way. But I mean, it's not unique to the cannabis industry, the challenges of bringing qualified people and retaining them over from the mainland. This industry has been unusual in that there is no local and legal commercial scale cannabis industry to hire from. So you have to train the people, and in fact, it can be challenging if you hire people that are used to growing here. Then they probably have ways that they like to grow, which are not the ways that we're growing, right? So that can be challenging, right? Because people have to follow what the process is. Whatever your process is, everyone has to follow it. So regular, ongoing, rigorous training is a critical part of our business.
Cool.
The hiring process and recruitment process has been a phenomenally positive experience for us. We started doing public open houses in April when our facility was open, and just introducing people to our company, introducing them to our facility, our Science Medical Advisory Board. We have people that have moved over from other industries because they were so impressed with our company, and we have gotten some absolute rock stars. Are they experts in the cannabis industry? No. But are they experts in our community and in our town and serving our neighbors? Absolutely. Are they longtime Kama'aina? Absolutely, which is what our company is all about. We have the experts. You've seen our panel. So we brought in Michael Bacchus to do the technical training and to teach them the technical knowledge, but we couldn't You can't teach somebody how to be Maui style. We joke because we're all a Maui team. We have one import from Oahu, and that was as far as we went. But we had, it's a 2.9% unemployment rate, and we had 500 applicants for 20 positions. It was very, very rewarding. We had the opportunity to be very selective. We were able to pick up a couple of displaced workers from the sugar company. We worked with the recruitment and retraining person from HCNS as they were shutting down. And I have one gentleman in our cultivation. This is the best agricultural job he's ever had in his life. Worked 18 years on the fields growing sugar, and he is so happy. So it's been a very, very rewarding experience for us.
The hiring process for the chemistry, there's actually a large pool of chemistry professionals here in Hawaii. So it was a little easier, I feel, and the same as they're saying, there was a lot of interest in wanting to work in the laboratory. So we sourced a lot of our chemists from Manoa, and with the help of Steve Hill being in the industry for over 9 years now.
We have a product that has no pesticides or fungicides, which is the main issue. In a black market or in a caregiver scenario, if they have to choose between their plant dying and using a pesticide, they're going to use a pesticide. It doesn't matter. For us, we cannot, because it's going to come through in the test. You can ask Dana about some of the tests that he's already run on other grows, and there's a lot of banned pesticide use in that product.
I feel that our pricing is definitely very competitive with the other 2 labs that are going to be coming out. So there's really not much.
No, I never said his lab was expensive. I just said that not because his prices are high.
Yeah. Thanks. So yeah, it's a little different, but yeah, there's really not much to be said. We are finding a lot of pesticides in the local market. So one of the big things that why testing is so important, and why the dispensaries can charge a higher fee than the black market, is you're getting safe cannabis, and it's probably the safest in the nation, from these guys over here. So it is a big deal, and pesticides run rampant in Hawaii, and so does micro yeast and mold is on pretty much 95% of all local cannabis that you'll find. So I find their pricing is fine, and I support it.
Same with the lab test.
We're glad everyone's still friends.
Yeah.
We've got another 35 minutes, so let's see what happens.
Your prices just went up.
I'm not gonna make a little chart on the gas pump.
Senator Sparrow?
And ultimately, when the program is up and running full throttle, the dispensaries will have to compete with the black market. And if they are much higher, basically they're either going to lose sales, or people will just continue to grow their own, or they'll go to the black market. And I think the market will correct itself, it will fix itself, and everyone will be able to profit and get a return on their investment.
I don't think actually any of the awarded licensees, I guess, had adult use or recreation built into their application. I think what the state was looking for were 8 licensees to help jumpstart the medical cannabis program. And I know for a fact that there were companies who were applying that came from recreational markets or had quite a bit of recreational experience when it comes to operating that type of business. And if you look at the 8 that were chosen, you can tell that they're heavily medically focused and medical leaning. Like, I think all of us have doctors and researchers on our teams, and they're actively active. They're not just there for name for the application. So I think we haven't really talked about it. We've kind of talked about it offline, and none of us really have a stance. Well, maybe one does, but most of us don't have a. I won't say. So one of us, not here, not in this room, that has a stance that that we look to adult use, because we know that if adult use were to come, the market's going to increase, of course, but also our competition is going to increase as well. So it really is. It doesn't really affect us and how we plan and operate in the short term right now. And even if it was, I don't think any of us would think would happen within the next few years. I think this is something that would be after this administration, and it would be something that the state will have to really look at to make sure that this program is working first and it's proper, before they even consider going into an adult.
So speaking of expansion, not necessarily into the recreational arena, but in terms of expansion of plans, are there new players being allowed in, or is it that the current licensees are going to be able to expand their own business? Senator Sparrow, can you answer that?
Sure. Well, the current law is we have 8 licensees with the opportunity for two setups, production, manufacturing, and retail. And this year we did amend the bill to allow one more dispensary in potentially rural areas, because if most of them are in town, for example, and there's a need on the North Shore, that's a possibility. But at the moment, I don't see much happening on expansion from the 8 licensees. As I said earlier, we need to get everybody up and running, evaluate, analyze, and make certain that it's working. Down the road, the big issue will be horizontal versus vertical. Right now, we have a vertical system, and it costs these individuals, these entities, I put $1 million plus just to get into the game. Obviously, there are many entrepreneurs that don't have that much money, and we're hearing from many individuals, your mom and pop type people, our brothers and sisters, our cousins, our neighbors and friends, that you need to see how you can open it up. But I don't see that happening anytime soon, and that could probably go along with the discussion of adult use and recreational, which again probably won't happen anytime soon. We're waiting to see what the Trump administration is going to do, and what Sessions is going to do, and what tax the federal government will allow in terms of. We don't think there's going to be any problems with medical marijuana, but on the adult use, we still don't know.
One thing I wanted to add is that when we got into this, we also thought there'd be more ancillary services that we provided here in Hawaii by local businesses that would support the cannabis industry. But what we found is that we've had to actually do a lot of the work. Like, there is no security company that's popped up from a local entrepreneur that wants to help, the cannabis industry. There's no, trim team or trim crews that are being organized to go from place to place. There's no beneficial insect provider or someone who wants to grow. There's we would have thought that other Hawaiian businesses would have kind of sprouted up to help supply us, but we're just making like a few hydroponic stores rich, really, at the end of the day, and they were here to begin with. So that's something that I'm surprised about. And even though it was built into the legislation to try to promote subcontracting and have like other businesses get into it, I found that for us it's been very difficult to find businesses that can fit within that model.
Why do you think that? Is it because it was seen as risky, or that it's a cash-only business as of now?
The delays were one thing. I think there was a lot of uncertainty, and then the other is it all goes back to banking. I think here in Hawaii, and there's this local oligopoly here that have agreed that they don't want to bank, and so a lot of the security services that wanted to get involved, they were told if they got involved that they would lose their accounts with banks, right, or you would not be banked, and so that became a problem. But I think that's
I think it boils down to the banks.
Yeah,
the banks, and in particular, the 2 largest banks have been extremely aggressive in discouraging people from servicing this industry. I think it's really unfortunate.
Even for the labs, we've been kicked out of multiple banks.
Can you talk a little closer?
Yeah, we've been kicked out of multiple banks as the lab, and I was shocked the very first time that the bank sent me an email saying, please come pick up your money.
You shouldn't have been shocked.
Well, I was a little bit, because I thought we were a little bit off. We're not being handling as much, but then I got to see that you have to have multiple bank accounts. You have to change your clothing before you go in the bank. Everything has to be under a DBA. If you do get a check from a dispensary and they on accident put their name on it, it's a big ordeal. You have to ask for another check. You're hoping it's on a money order. There's a lot of issues with the banking that still makes me feel like I'm doing something wrong.
I think actually going back to one of your earlier questions is what makes sort of Hawaii different from the rest of the industry is there's 25 states in the country that have medical cannabis programs. Every single one of them, except every state but one, have banks or credit unions servicing the industry. Every single state except one. That's Hawaii. The approach of the local banks and credit unions and the fear that they have of this industry is really unprecedented in this country. Until that changes, I think you're going to see challenges of ancillary businesses who are willing to work with dispensaries. And the Hvca decision was a classic example of just fear-mongering.
So with any clear future, close future, from going from cash only to credit cards or even Bitcoin, other types of payments?
Well, I think all of the dispensaries are working on cash alternatives. It doesn't have to be a Visa or MasterCard logo. I think you'll be seeing pay by phone here soon enough. But start off with cash, and well, I don't know about Bitcoin, but certainly there are multiple payment options that are coming.
State of medical research on cannabis, and if that has shifted in the last 15 months or since medical cannabis has really come into more of something that's seen more. Is it really medicine? Have things shifted at all, or what are you seeing?
So I think that there's a couple of different things that have really helped our industry as far as research goes. Cannabis is heavily researched. There's over 10,000 primary research articles on cannabis worldwide. So I think at this point, if you are a medical provider and you don't see the medicinal value in cannabis, that it's not for lack of research. It's more because of bias against the industry and against this plant. I think also with Colorado giving out research grants, we're going to be able to see a lot more research and a lot more expansion done here in the United States.
Just as a seminal report was released by the National Academy of Sciences, which is a premier scientific research organization that's a part of the federal government. And the National Academy of Sciences report stated that they evaluated 10,000 peer-reviewed studies. They issued 100 conclusions, and they determined that there's conclusive evidence that cannabis is medicine, conclusive evidence that it provides relief of chronic pain, spasticity for multiple sclerosis, that's the tightening of the muscles, as well as relief of nausea and the treatment of chemotherapy and radiation therapy. So this is the federal government saying that cannabis is medicine. Now, we just need the other parts of the federal government, namely the Drug Enforcement Administration and the Department of Justice, to accept the findings of their own government. So the debate of whether cannabis is medicine is over. It's been determined conclusively, which is the highest level of standard by the National Academy of Science, that cannabis is medicine. Now it's just a matter of educating the public and the rest of our government.
The University of Hawaii get involved in research and development, and in 2016 we did pass in our legislation an opportunity for UH to get involved in research, and hopefully one day we can become an international center for medical marijuana research, and how we could improve and expand its uses and make it better, and develop a Hawaii brand that will go around the world.
All right, I like it. All right, so we're going to get to the audience questions. If we could ask the 1 to 2 panelists answer, unless you're like dying to be that third person, so we can try to get through as many of these questions as possible. So the first one is, I must have to like come out from behind the podium to see this. State chartered institutions to facilitate access to financial services.
But at this stage, I'm not aware that discussion is going anywhere. I don't know if our dispensary owners will
Yeah,
know.
so it's actually, a lot of people think that it's a matter of whether a financial cash depository institution, whether it's state or federally chartered, has an impact, and it has no impact whatsoever. It has nothing to do with that. Any financial institution, whether it's chartered by the state or the federal government, is subject to the Bank Secrecy Act and any money laundering provisions, which are enforced by the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. The deposit of funds that result from the sale of cannabis is by definition money laundering, because cannabis is a Schedule I controlled substance. So the federal government has issued guidance that allows banks to service medical marijuana dispensaries and ancillary services. It's just a matter of the local banks or credit unions, at least one of them, stepping up to the plate and making the decision to work with the industry.
Next question. Patients to support medical cannabis.
If you look at statistics, it should be about 2.8% of the population qualify to use medical cannabis. If you look at Colorado for adult use, 1 in 10 adults use cannabis in Colorado. So I think, yes, we have about, a little over 1 million people here in Hawaii, so there's a potential for up to about 30,000. 1.4, there you go. 1.4 million, we're looking at over 30,000 patients. We're only at 17 right now. You're likely going to see about 30,000 patients.
Plus the tourist.
If that's allowed.
Eventually. Actually, our legislation has a reciprocity in it, and it allows reciprocity come 2018.
That is not going to happen.
No. Let me finish.
Actually,
let me finish.
Rules.
We're not going to do reciprocity in 2018. But if that's something we want to do, the state administration, we need to aggressively go after that. But right now, it's not going to happen in 2018. But we understand the issue of reciprocity and allowing a tourist to, for example, come in and purchase.
The Strong Hawaii brand, having the best, yet another of the best in the world, another product. Okay, next question. What technology products do you wish existed to help you with your business?
Decent software. I've been in the technology software industry my whole career, and I've been through a couple of really dramatically, rapidly growing markets, such as the internet. I was working down the street from Netscape when they went IPO, and so I've been through this a couple of times, and this industry is growing as fast as anything I've ever seen. Because it's growing so fast, and because it's federally illegal, you don't see the large software companies providing technology, so it's all sort of startups. And because it's growing so fast and there's such limited options, really marginal software is gaining traction, and it's just, we're really far away. It's hard to get good support from mainland software companies. The seed to sale tracking software is just really weak across the industry, and there is ripe opportunity for new, innovative solutions to enter this market, in particular software.
Future years, is it conceivable that Amazon will enter this field? Opening it up to anybody.
I would say Amazon is already in it. If you do a search for cannabis canisters, hydroponics, growing, I mean, you can get everything except for cannabis. So they're already in it in a big way.
pH monitors, it's cheaper, it's faster. I get labels for our barcodes.
How are you handling cash from collection from customers to payments to investors, employees, and vendors? This would be for Ty or Kalani.
Secret. Trade secret. We built that into the application as well, and we're following through on our plan for cash management. It costs a lot to deal in cash for us, not only for security, but the time it takes to count and move cash around. Customers, we've had no problems with taking cash. A lot of cash drops during the day for each of the registers. investors, they haven't received any money yet, so we're not going to worry about that for a while. Employees, we're using a payroll company. I won't disclose who, but they're okay with it at this current time. And for vendors, Dana loves my cash. I drop it off once in a while.
I agree. I like it.
Yeah. In construction right now, right? Everyone's doing construction. My contractors have no problem taking cash. We just get receipts and we make sure we provide the right documentation. But they're fine with. They're used to it, so they're fine. They're used to it.
Shows on TV that feature entrepreneurs in Colorado and Oregon, and people driving really expensive sports cars or really flashy, and so there's this notion that it's a business that you're just going to be rolling in money and profits, and it's while I think we all hope to have profitable businesses, right now it has been a hard slog because it's very expensive, it's very complex, and it's very high risk. Because of the uncertainty, the market size, of the market timing, of the regulatory framework, what products you can sell. The most popular products on the mainland are not allowed to be sold here, and namely vaporizer cartridges. So it's challenging. So for people who were applying for licenses thinking it's a way to quick money, it's not.
Yeah, the only quick money is selling your business, and we can't really do that, so that's another problem because of the ownership restrictions that are placed on us. But if we sold it, I think we could make some money. But not making any money right now.
All right, next question is, are exports possible in the future?
The first exports have started from Canada. Canadian cannabis has been shipped to South America and I believe to Australia. There is a international treaty that, and I can't remember the name of the treaty if anyone here knows that. The Single Convention, yes.
Thank you, Pam.
Thank you, Pam. That prohibits the legal cultivation or international transport. So basically, of illegal drugs like cannabis. So it's actually the U.S. government's their view of the treaty obligations that is one of the reasons the Department of Justice takes the approach that they do. So I think for any exports, first of all, exports from Hawaii to the mainland, that would require descheduling of cannabis. And exports from Hawaii internationally would require a change of a single convention.
Is any of the key testing for efficacy as opposed to potency?
Yeah, so those are they're two different things. One is testing for quality control, for potency, for labeling. Efficacy would be done through research studies. And getting FDA approval for efficacy testing of a Schedule I substance is extremely difficult. Our medical director, Dr. Sue Sisley, is the principal investigator of an FDA-approved clinical trial for whole plant smoked cannabis, and it took her 7 years to get her study fully approved and get her study drug. So it's very time-consuming and very difficult.
Thanks, Brian. All right, next question. What research plans a strong Hawaii brand?
So there's a mix, and I don't know, I think each dispensary is going to take its own strategy of selling sort of local strains or strains which have origins outside of Hawaii but ended up here somehow. For us, one of our goals, and it was part of our application, was the goal of collecting data on the efficacy of the strains that we do have at a anonymous level, and then develop a breeding program to develop strains of therapeutically specific beneficial strains of cannabis using the data that is collected locally. And I think that could be a really good opportunity for collaboration amongst the licensees to share the efficacy data across islands to help all of us improve our products.
Okay, next.
We were going to hire a third-party security company to provide either transport or security within the dispensary itself. We've elected now to have our own in-house security team, so I have I don't know what Maui has, but I have 6 security specialists right now. One's an ex-Marine, 2 are SWAT officers with HPD, both snipers. I have two other officers, retired officers from HPD, and I have 1 sheriff as well. And they have 1 naval officer that's coming on board soon. So it's a pretty scary team that we've kind of amassed right now, and I did not budget these salaries into my initial application. I thought it'd be some company would come and help take care of all that for us.
Outside security teams and working with that, and very early on, and with our security advisors, decided to develop our team in-house and working with getting tactical guidance and training through our team. So we're right on budget and where we expected and anticipated to be. It's expensive, but right, we anticipated that.
Question person. If you could pick just one thing about this process, getting to sales, to tell yourself 15 months ago, and I think if we could actually expand that to
here and on the mainland with these chemists. So it's been a pleasant surprise of the chemistry professionals in Hawaii, and they're wanting to be in this industry. So it's been pretty positive at the lab.
Great, thank you. So if you have a burning desire to also answer, feel free, but we're going to try to get through a lot of questions in a shorter amount of time. And then, of course, if I could remind everyone to please type your questions into sif.ly. We'll try to get through as many of those as possible, and I'll allocate a certain amount of time depending on how many questions we actually have. So, May, are you surprised by the profile you're seeing for the average user? Any surprises?
So I think that in the beginning, I was, like most people, a little bit skeptical, and I thought that it was going to be, mainly younger people who were wanting it more for recreational use or to party, but that hasn't been my experience at all. In fact, my average patient is probably, anywhere from 45 to 65, may have used cannabis recreationally in college or high school. And now that they have, arthritis, back pain, migraines, and they've gone through and failed several treatment regimens, they're looking towards cannabis as a safe alternative to treat chronic pain.
How did that settle out, and what was determined?
Well, right now, all we do is charge the GET. And on a bigger issue, of course, that's always been an issue on whether we should even charge the GET on healthcare, on food. So that's a discussion that's been around for a while. But in terms of increasing it on medical marijuana, I don't expect that at all. As I mentioned earlier, if we do look at recreational or adult use, then that will be the big debate on how much. But at the moment, taxes and medical marijuana is really not a concern or issue at the legislature. There's a lot of other little things or big things we have to fix in the next session or two, but taxes is not one of them.
Yeah, it's been humbling having so many people support us. I think the lineups just show the pent-up demand that's there for these last 17 years, from medical to having a dispensary.
Can you speak more on the mic?
Sorry. Yeah, things have evened out a bit for us. We still get lineups every day that we're open. So we do have a lineup right before we open, normally between 10 to 30 people, I'd say. We work through that lineup by about lunch, and then it's just a steady stream of people that come through. For the sellout, it's a mixture. Any sellout that did occur, I think instead of blaming the labs or blaming the Department of Health or blaming whoever, it really was a business decision at the end of the day. It was based on our best guess at what the demand was going to be, and it was also, we had to balance that against sending the samples in for the first time for lab testing, right? Like if get a failed lab test, the entire batch had to be destroyed. Our batches are between 2 to 5 pounds. That's between $20,000 to $60,000 worth of product would have to be destroyed. And so, as a company that's trying to open as quickly as possible, you have to kind of couch the risks when it comes to that testing. And so, for Aloha Green, we went with 8 sample tests, and it was a small amount, small batches, but it was amounts that we thought would last us 4 or 5 days. And we had a second test that was coming through right after that. So we don't have an issue now, of course, because every week Steve Hill is coming to test product with us. But it was that initial start that we just weren't sure how many people were going to show up. I pegged, during the application, even now, I pegged demand at about 3 pounds a day, I'd say, for Oahu. And that was based with 3 licensees open, so we would share about 1 pound, I guess, of sales each day. And it's shown to be about that. That's about what it is with the current 17,000 patients that are there. As that increases, of course, every new qualified patient that signs up, though, instead of being a grower patient, they're likely going to be a dispensary patient. So you're going to see a shift from what the people are wanting. So the numbers that May is going to see, likely they're just going to be coming to us. And so we're going to see kind of an exponential growth in our demand over the next 6 months. But we're prepared for that. We have plans. Our expansion plans are already done. We're ready to grow. I think we're going to be at like 3,000, 4,000 plants in the next few weeks or something. So that's more than enough cannabis for the current demand here in Oahu.
And the flowers are available, the smokable stuff, but not the oils and tinctures. And it seems that a lot of certain people in certain generations are not as open to the smokable, or that it's kind of looked not down upon, but there's a preference for the other stuff. What's going on with that in terms of the labs, and when can we see an update in terms of access to the tinctures and oils that aren't as easily available as the flowers from other resources?
It was a last minute thing, like everyone's saying. We felt that when we received our provisional certification that we would be certified and for oil-based products, tinctures, stuff like that. But at the last minute, the Department of Health decided they wanted us to send in another validation study proving that we could do this with a consistent basis. What they require is a data package of spiking each sample with each cannabinoid profile, pesticides, microbiology, etc. And with all that being said, it is a rigorous process. It's not easy to make them happy and to do the job at the same time with bringing in all the samples from the 2 dispensaries that are open. So the update on when and where will the derivative products be coming, I might be a little skeptical, but I feel late next week or early the next week we should be certified for these products.
Okay, thank you.
But everyone always says I'm a little skeptical.
Yeah. Everyone told me 2 weeks. Optimistic, wrong word. Yeah. But we're hopeful.
Legislative Oversight Committee on Medical Marijuana, and we were just discussing this issue yesterday at our meeting. And the Department of Health is overly cautious because, as the state, they're responsible for the well-being and health of all of its residents. But sometimes we do feel that they are over-regulating, and they are expecting and asking for too much. So the pressure is on them to get things right as quickly as possible, because ironically, the Department of Health, is anti-smoking, and yet here's this program that they're in charge of, and most of the people, at least in this initial phase, are smoking the flower. Just yesterday, there was a proposal through Hawaii administrative rules, which is one way we can change the system. You've got the legislative process, January to May, where the legislators decide, and then you've got the Department of Health that could also do rulemaking. So we're looking at the cartridges basically for vaping as one opportunity sooner versus later. And then, of course, the issue of edibles is We're having a major discussion on that right now. I'm hoping that we will pass legislation next year on edibles, and but the issue on labs and how it's going to be tested, again, we're just trying to figure everything out. It is a learning curve. There is trial and error, as you can see, but the main thing is hopefully we're making progress, and the administration has been under intense scrutiny and in some cases criticism, especially from us lawmakers, that they understand that they need to help us get this program up and running, because right now it's for patients. It's for people with health problems, health concerns, and the longer we wait or delay on things, the worse it is for those patients.
The next question is around pricing, and kind of in relation to the black market. We even look at more mature markets like Colorado, and it's still thriving even there. So Brian, can you talk to us a little bit about how pricing was determined?
Oh, I think you should ask Ty that.
Ty?
Well, we're not open yet, right? Our dispensary isn't open, so we haven't set our pricing. We still got to see where our cost of goods sold lands. But.
What do you think of our price, Brian? When it comes to pricing, we based our, we received a lot of feedback from patients as well as from the Department of Health on our price. It's important that we don't price the product too low. I think you're right in the fact that the product will commoditize and it will come down in price. If you look at Florida right now, medical cannabis is about $15 a gram in Florida now. In Colorado, it started, Washington and Colorado started in the mid-20s, low 20s per gram, and now it's dropped to like $10 to $12 or even less at times. Yeah, you can go. That wholesale cost is even lower, and depending on the flower. I think that really is, for Washington, it's an aspect of supply and demand. There are more producers there. It's not as good to be a producer in some states. It's better to be in the retail section. But most of the time, it's actually better to be a grower than it is to be a retailer. You're a price setter most of the time, unless there's just too much supply of the product. I think once all the dispensaries are operating and you see similar and comparable product out on the market, you'll start to see kind of a lowering of that price. If you look at what it costs to grow indoor, and the reason we have high prices is it's not because we choose to have that. Our costs are higher. They are higher than what wholesale costs in Washington or in Colorado would be. You can buy pounds for $1,200 to $1,500 a pound. There is no way we can grow an under $1,500 pound cost here in Hawaii if we're growing indoor. If we're growing outdoor or in a greenhouse, then yes, we can get below that price. But if you're going to grow purely indoor with no pesticides, no fungicides, that's a completely sealed environment with filtration, for air filtration, with all the UV and everything that we're going to do in there, with 1,000-watt lights. When we did our estimates, it was between $1,700 to $2,000 a pound cost to produce the product. So unless we find, and with lab testing at what it is, I'm not knocking Dana over there, but because of the lab testing requirements and how we've set it up, if you look in Canada, Colorado, they're testing 20-pound batches, 50-pound batches.
Government's involved in the new industry. There's going to be a rocky road. There's going to be obstacles. There's going to be a learning curve. But the fact that we're only 12 months behind in sales, I realize for the entrepreneurs it hurt them. But from government's perspective, 12 months is not bad. But hopefully from here on out, we need leadership at all levels. You really need leadership at all levels. And hopefully that will be forthcoming. Thank you.
Yeah, I think like what everyone said, it's about patience. I think I would have told myself to sleep more and not worry as much. And it's not a race, it's not a race to be first. I think it's about doing it right. And so I think we could have taken our time, I guess, a little on a few of the decisions that we made. We were ready to grow in September of last year. We were expecting, we were ready to open by Thanksgiving or first week of December if there were labs and if everything was up and running. So nothing has really changed from that facility, since then. But yeah, I think we were just taking our time. If I knew everything was going to be so slow. Yeah. And I may have laid off those growers that I said I wasn't willing to lay off. I think I would have laid off half the staff as well.
one specific thing they're excited to tackle, that's their next big thing they're tackling, and something exciting that they'd like to share for the next 6 months of this journey.
Getting our our larger production up and running, I think it's going to happen the next couple weeks. I think that's going to be very exciting. That's going to quadruple our production that we're able to do, and then finalizing this lease for a second dispensary that's should open here on the island. So we should announce that soon.
Okay, thank you.
That we are at this point where we are, and I'm hoping in the next 12 months that we will tackle edibles as well as the expansion of the ailments, because that's one way where you can get more patients. And examples or legislation I have introduced in the past include expanding it for depression, stress, anxiety, and insomnia. And if we can do those 4, we could increase that patient base tremendously.
My practice, but really working on my passion, which is patient education, because there's a huge gap in getting a card and using cannabis. How do I use it? What do I do? What's available? What's topical? And so really for me, just focusing on patient education.
Yeah, for us it is rolling out our derivative products and continuing to refine our product formulations and working with our patient education specialists to further develop our patient education programs, outreach, and just it's so exciting to see what's going to come out of our Science Medical Advisory Board. They're so much fun to work with. So that's what we're looking to, and we'll be expanding our facilities to keep up with the market.
Thank you. Brian?
What I'm really excited about is opening our doors and serving our patients. Months before we submitted the application, we conducted a bunch of outreach sessions, and in particular in the veteran community. We just had a dinner with we thought that 2 or 3 people would show up, and 23 people showed up a few days ago, this past weekend, of veterans. And just listening to their stories and the challenges that they've gone through, and having the opportunity to really serve them in the dispensary that we've been talking about for almost 2 years is really, really exciting.
Thank you. Dana?
I think from a lab standpoint, we look forward to all the licensees opening up. We would look forward to working with the local MMJ card holders more and showing them that testing is very, at a good price range, and it's very easy to do. And we're also looking to open up all of our testing opportunities. We have terpene analysis, extended cannabinoid profile, and just being able to open up all of our horizons for everybody.
Thank you all for being here today. We're a few minutes over, but I'd like to thank our panelists. What a great discussion, and we got through a ton of content. I'm very impressed, so thank you. And I'd like to thank you all for coming today. Our next HVCA Luncheon will be on Thursday, September 28th, so we'll see you all then. And panelists, if we could take a quick picture before everyone jumps up here to talk to you. Thank you.